Today I will be ranking every pellet shotgun in the game. A few things I want to get out of the way first. I am only ranking pellet shotguns today, not slugs. I think slugs are entirely different weapons and should be ranked as so. This also includes duality, as it does have a slug function. Also, similarly to how I did my last sniper tier list, I am not going to cover the bottom two tiers in depth. I will still rank them based on my experience using them, but I am not going to cover each one specifically to sort of cut down on the length of the video. And again, I think the top few tiers are what we all are really focused on, so I will not be going over in depth the bottom two tiers, but I did rank the shotguns there. So the bottom two tiers are ranked, just not highlighted in this video. Also, this is my tier list and my experience using and playing against all of these weapons. So if you disagree with the placement, that's fine. This is just my opinion on where they should be based on my experience, which I do feel I have a pretty good grasp on where these shotguns should be. So with that out of the way, let's get into the list. As you see, I have ranked the C and D tier shotties, but I will not be talking about them. Leave a comment if you want to know my reasoning. A lot of them are rapid fire frames, which are just not worth using right now in my opinion. Others could be aggressive frames that are low handling or don't get handling perks, or some lightweights that just don't have any range perks or have low base stats, something along those lines. I'm sure there's likely one or two that could be bumped up, especially some of the aggressive frames, but personally I didn't feel they quite could be bumped up. They couldn't quite make the cut in my opinion, but if you wanted to bump some of them up, I'm sure you could. So let's start off with our B tier. First, we have the Fellwinter's Lie. How the mighty have fallen. While it's not terrible in our B tier, it's definitely not the god tier meta defining shotty that it used to be. You can run surplus or slide shot, both are good, along with opening shot. It is locked into full choke, which I do think hurts the weapon because one, you lose headshot multiplier with no real upside as the trade-off. You also lose out on some potential handling from something like Barrel Shroud. It's still a decent shotty, and if you're looking for an aggressive frame in the energy slot that's easy to get, this could be your go-to. Next up, we have a lightweight frame in the 7 Seraph CQC. This is one of my favorite shotties in the game, but lightweights are just not what they used to be, and the perk selection is definitely hurting compared to some of the others. I would say slide shot snapshot is probably the role you want to go for, but I'm going to be honest, I had this way higher up on my list until I tested it out again after the recent changes, and I was not impressed. I had to bump it down. I was struggling to get consistent kills with this, and sure, it could be user error, I guess, but I did bump this way down because of performance I was getting from it. There are better lightweights in the slot, so I'm going to place it here in lower B tier. Next up, we have another one of my favorites actually, which is the Without Remorse, another energy lightweight. So this one is craftable and it does get threat detector, which is an S tier perk on shotties, and it also gets a decent range perk in fragile focus, which has just been buffed. Also, I low-key kind of like hipfire grip, but I don't think I can say it's better than threat detector, but definitely give it a try. I have no testing on hipfire grip. Maybe it's just in my head. I don't know. It's kind of nice though. Overall, it's craftable. It can get pretty solid perks. I think its placing really speaks to the state of lightweight frames more than the weapon itself. So definitely a solid weapon. I do like it. B tier. Next up, we're going to finish off our B tier with the Mindbender's Ambition. Again, another fallen titan, as this used to dominate the meta as well. However, look at these perks. Look how they massacred my boy. No opening shot is honestly criminal, and to be honest, the only perks worth using are really threat detector and fragile focus. I do think it's decent with a god roll, so I guess look for max handling really. You do get an adept mod, which is a big plus. You can bump up the handling a bit, but I can't quite put it into A tier because, well, spoiler alert, the aggressive frames in the next tier do get access to opening shot, so I just couldn't bump it up, but it does sit at the top of B tier. So here is our current list as we head into the A tier. First up to kick off the A tier is the Reese Walker, a kinetic lightweight frame from Iron Banner. I prefer surplus in the first slot, but quick draw is also extremely good. I just think that surplus is a little more useful for me personally because I usually run Ophidians as well, and quick draw on a lightweight frame that already has so good handling just doesn't really seem to add much to me. It's already good enough, really. It has good draw speed. So I do like surplus, just gives an overall better feel, but I mean, both are solid. It's really up to preference. I do think in the second perk slot, you definitely want Iron Reach. If you don't get Iron Reach, you're better off with some other lightweights. This is sort of what makes this one of the better lightweights, is that it does get Iron Reach. Kind of like Opening Shot, I guess, but it's always active. So it is a very good perk, actually. Iron Reach is very good because it's always active, just buffing that range stat. Overall, it's a very good shotgun. Again, lightweight frame, kind of holding it back, but if they ever do adjust the sandbox or how the frames are like amongst each other, like how good each frame is, if lightweights ever get buffed, this will definitely be one of the top weapons. Next up is our first precision frame that I'm talking about, and that is the Compass Rose. So this just came back in the event recently, and I was very disappointed. It could have been, like, very easily could have been an event that I grinded out, but they just didn't give this any notable perks really, so it was a big letdown for me. I will say quick draw snapshot is probably the role to go for, and while lightweights are held down for their frame, I think Compass Rose is actually boosted up for its frame, which is the precision frame, because they probably are the best overall, most consistent frame right now. So because it is a precision frame, I do have it up here in the lower A tier, even though there's nothing really special about it. Its perk selection isn't great, but that precision frame does help it out, so I am going to keep it here in the A tier. Next up, we have the popular Wastelander. This used to be potentially the best shotgun in the game, but lightweight frames do hold it back a little bit now. So personally, I don't think it's quite as good as it used to be. They did buff lightweight frames recently, but they're just not quite up to par in my opinion. So it is here in the A tier, but this is still an excellent shotgun. It is craftable, which is a huge plus. Personally, I crafted slide shot, opening shot, and essentially max handling. Well, it basically gives you 100 range and 100 handling almost, which is obviously pretty cracked, but like I said, it is held back by that lightweight frame a little bit right now. So even though it's not what it used to be, it is still very good. And again, if they ever do anything to lightweight frames, this will definitely be on top. Next up in the A tier, we have the Imperial Decree. This is craftable, and I would rock threat detector and opening shot along with high handling. This is an aggressive frame, but unlike the lower tiered aggressive frames, it does get threat detector and opening shot, which is honestly pretty cracked. So aggressive frames are good right now, especially on Warlock with Ophidians or another handling exotic or a subclass maybe like Solar Hunter, something that buffs handling, especially on aggressive frames. Very good. So I am going to place the Imperial Decree in high A tier. And now to top off the final weapon in the A tier, we have the Astral Horizon from Trials of Osiris. So this is pretty much identical to Imperial Decree. You could really interchange them. They're even in the same slot, but I have Astral getting the slight edge because it does get adept mods and it does have a better origin trait in Alacrity. So like I said, slight edge, but I do want to say that unless you have the 5 out of 5 God Roll Astral, you're probably going to be better off with the Imperial Decree, because the Imperial Decree is craftable, so you can guarantee the 5 out of 5 roll, whereas Astral is definitely RNG, a little bit harder to get. You have to grind for that, you know, that gold chest in the Trials of Osiris. So if you don't have the 5 out of 5 God roll, definitely swap these two, but they are very similar. Same God roll for both, similar stats, but yeah, slight edge to Astral Horizon in my opinion. So here is our tier list as we enter the S tier. Now we are getting up into the big dogs, and we're going to start off with maybe my most controversial pick, we'll see, and that is the Retold Tale. I don't know what it is about the Retold Tale, but it is just very consistent. It's not just me. I see this in high level lobbies or even tournaments. Some very good players swear by this, and I've even seen a lot of people use it as their go-to shotgun currently. Now, I have heard that it seems to be better on controller than on MNK, but I really couldn't tell you like if there's any validity behind that. I really don't even know how that would really happen. I don't know if maybe aim assist plays a role, who knows. but that is sort of the rumblings that I've heard. I have heard that it's a controller shotgun more so. Seems like the better players that do use it are on controller, but like I said, I don't really have any data for that. I don't know why that would be. Maybe someone in the comments can let me know. But yeah, it is very good, and it is a precision frame. So I already talked about the precision frame. It is the best one overall right now for most people. So yeah, that is why it's going to be here in the low S tier. As far as perks go, it doesn't really get the best perk selection, but it does get slide shot, which is very good. And then I guess in the second perk slot, you want maybe snapshot or killing wind. Nothing crazy. Like I said, on paper, I don't know why this weapon is so good, but I am still going to place it in the bottom of the S tier. Next up is another precision frame, and that is the Fractithist. Now, this is going to be your go-to kinetic slot precision frame. You want opening shot and then either slide shot or quick drop based on your preference. But this thing is a beast. I could see you bumping it up even more if you wanted, but I do have it here in the S tier, so I think that's fair. Overall, it's solid. It gets excellent perks. I really like slide shot opening for me personally, just to max out that range as high as you can. Overall, very solid. I do think it hurts it being in the kinetic slot a little bit. I prefer to use a kinetic primary, but obviously I'm not going to let that affect my ranking too much, but that sort of is why I don't use it too much. But anyway, it is in our top 5 here in the S tier. Okay, so now we enter the top 3, and at number 3 we have the Found Verdict. Now this is currently my go-to shotgun, so I'd probably bump this up another slot further, but I think number 3 is fair. It gets opening shot and either slide shot or surplus. It also has access to adept mods, giving access to some very high handling for an aggressive frame. So run this again with Ophidian Aspect or another subclass or exotic that boosts your handling, and you are cooking. I swear, this thing is so good. It's just hard to get. You do have to do all the challenges for Vaulted Glass and like the harder difficulty. I'm not gonna lie, this is one of the harder weapons to get, especially if you want a god roll. I still don't have a god roll. I don't know if it's necessarily worth the grind to get, but I'm not gonna throw that into the ranking. I feel like I should try to separate the ability to obtain it from its actual ranking, because on paper it is very good. It is an excellent shotgun, so I do have it here in S tier, and it is in our top 3. Next up is the popular precision frame, the Matador. So this comes in at number 2. You have all run into this in trials or in the Crucible. It is a very popular shotgun right now. You do want threat detector and opening shot if possible. It's just so consistent, and it is in the energy slot, so I know that's a big plus for a lot of people. Overall, I don't really have much to say. It's the best frame with the best 2 perks, and it has decent base stats, so we have it at number 2. And then at number 1 overall, no surprise here, we have the conditional finality. I mean, what can I say? This thing is the GOAT. We all knew this was coming. It freezes people, it burns people, it looks sick, it has crazy handling. The range is oddly deceptive based on the stat bar, but what other shotty just gets double kills? Like, the shatter effect on the freeze from the first bullet is honestly crazy. It can counter bubbles, it can counter wells. It counters all supers, really. It's just a great weapon overall. I think it's the best exotic they've designed in a long time. I don't think it needs nerfed personally. I feel like nerfing a top shotty is definitely going backwards in this game balance wise, so I have seen that floating around, but in my opinion, I think it's fine where it's at. I think it's a good standard for how exotics should be, especially raid exotics. So yeah, grind out your raids each week. If you like shotguns, you definitely need this thing. I'm not just saying that, like, it's legit. So number 1 overall, conditional finality. So that is my list. Let me know what you guys think. Again, if you disagree, that's cool. You can obviously swap some of them around, or maybe bump a few up from the bottom tiers especially. This is just my list from my experience, both in game and in things like private matches or tourneys. But anyway, I'm gonna wrap it up here. As always, I am awake, and I'll see you guys next time.